Ted Bundy, a name that has become synonymous with terror and the darkest depths of human depravity. The name alone sends chills down the spines of countless people. His story is one that has been told and retold, each time evoking a sense of dread and disbelief. He was handsome and charismatic, a law student who volunteered for a suicide hotline. To those who knew him, he seemed like the perfect gentleman, a man with a bright future ahead. No one suspected he was a vicious predator hiding in plain sight. His ability to blend in, to appear normal and even likable, was perhaps his most terrifying trait. Bundy shattered the image of the typical serial killer, proving that evil can lurk beneath the most charming facade. He was the wolf in sheep's clothing, a master of deception. He preyed on young women, often luring them with his charm and fabricated injuries. His methods were as cunning as they were cruel, exploiting the kindness and trust of his victims. His crimes, marked by brutality and depravity, shocked the nation. Each new discovery of his heinous acts added to the growing horror and disbelief. Bundy's case challenged our perceptions of good and evil, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality that monsters can exist among us, disguised as ordinary people. His duality was a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving. This is the chilling story of Ted Bundy, America's most notorious serial killer, a man whose name has become a byword for evil. It is a story of deception, violence, and the dark side of human nature, a tale that delves into the psyche of a man who committed unspeakable acts. It is a story that continues to fascinate and horrify us to this day. The allure of true crime lies in its ability to reveal the darkest corners of the human mind, and Bundy's story is a prime example. This essay will delve into the life and crimes of Ted Bundy, exploring his early life, his psychological profile, and the horrific crimes that made him infamous. We will look at the factors that may have contributed to his descent into madness. We will examine his methods, his ability to evade capture, and his eventual downfall. His story is not just one of horror, but also of the relentless pursuit of justice. Join us as we unravel the enigma of Ted Bundy and explore the lasting impact his crimes have had on society. His legacy is one of fear and caution, a reminder of the potential for darkness within us all. Through this exploration, we aim to understand not just the man, but the broader implications of his actions. How did he manage to elude capture for so long? What does his story tell us about the nature of evil? We will delve into the psychological aspects, examining what drove Bundy to commit such atrocities. Was it nature or nurture? A question that continues to baffle experts. The public's reaction to Bundy's capture was a mix of relief and horror. His trial was one of the most watched in history, a spectacle that captivated the nation. In the courtroom, Bundy was both defendant and performer, using his charm to manipulate those around him. But in the end, justice prevailed. His execution marked the end of a terrifying chapter, but the scars left by his actions remain. The story of Ted Bundy is a stark reminder of the fragility of our sense of safety. As we reflect on his life and crimes, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance and the need to understand the complexities of human behavior. The story of Ted Bundy is not just a tale of horror, but a lesson in the depths of human nature. Join us as we continue to explore the enigma of Ted Bundy, seeking to understand the man behind the monster and the lasting impact of his actions on our society. Ted Bundy's early life was marked by instability and shrouded in a web of secrecy. Born Theodore Robert Cowell in 1946, he spent his formative years believing his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister. This fabricated family dynamic, coupled with the absence of his biological father, cast a long shadow over his childhood. Bundy's early years were further complicated by his introverted nature. He struggled to connect with his peers and often retreated into a world of fantasy and voyeurism. These early signs of social isolation and disturbing behavior hinted at the darkness that would later consume him. Despite these challenges, Bundy excelled academically, graduating high school and even attending university. However, beneath the veneer of normalcy, Bundy harbored deep-seated insecurities and a growing fascination with violence and control. His seemingly normal upbringing masked a deeply troubled past that would ultimately shape him into the monster the world would come to know. Understanding the psychology of a serial killer like Ted Bundy is a complex and often disturbing endeavor. It requires delving into the darkest corners of the human mind, where the lines between nature and nurture blur, and where the seeds of unimaginable horror are sown. Experts believe that a multitude of factors, both biological and environmental, contribute to the creation of such a disturbed individual. These factors intertwine in a web of influences that shape the mind and behavior of a person like Bundy. From genetic predispositions to early childhood experiences, each element plays a crucial role in the development of a serial killer. In Bundy's case, his troubled childhood, marked by a fabricated family structure and possible abuse, likely played a significant role in shaping his psyche. Growing up in a household filled with secrets and lies, Bundy was exposed to a distorted sense of reality from a young age. This unstable environment may have contributed to his later inability to form genuine emotional connections. Psychologists have identified several key traits that characterize Bundy's personality and modus operandi. These traits include a grandiose sense of self-worth, a need for control, and a lack of empathy. Bundy's narcissistic tendencies made him believe he was invincible, and his desire for dominance drove him to commit heinous acts. He possessed an uncanny ability to charm and manipulate people, often presenting himself as a charismatic and trustworthy individual. This facade of normalcy allowed him to blend into society seamlessly, making it difficult for anyone to suspect his true nature. His charm was a powerful tool that he wielded with precision, ensnaring his victims with ease. This superficial charm allowed him to gain the trust of his victims, lulling them into a false sense of security before he struck. His victims, often unsuspecting and vulnerable, were drawn to his seemingly genuine demeanor. Bundy's ability to mask his true intentions made him an exceptionally dangerous predator. Furthermore, Bundy exhibited a profound lack of empathy and remorse for his actions. This emotional void enabled him to commit atrocities without hesitation. He was able to detach himself from the humanity of his victims, viewing them merely as means to an end. He viewed his victims as objects to possess and control, deriving pleasure from their suffering. This sadistic pleasure was a driving force behind his crimes, fueling his need to dominate and destroy. Bundy's actions were not just about killing, they were about exerting power and control over his victims in the most brutal way possible. This chilling detachment from human emotion allowed him to commit unspeakable acts of violence without a shred of guilt or conscience. His ability to compartmentalize his actions and maintain a facade of normalcy is what made him one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Understanding Bundy's psychological profile offers a glimpse into the mind of a true monster, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. Ted Bundy's reign of terror began in the Pacific Northwest in the early 1970s. This region, known for its serene landscapes and tight-knit communities, was about to be plunged into a nightmare that would leave an indelible mark on its history. His victims, primarily young women with long dark hair parted down the middle, resembled his former girlfriend Stephanie Brooks, a woman who had rejected him. This rejection seemed to fuel a deep-seated rage within Bundy, driving him to target women who bore a striking resemblance to her. Each victim was a haunting reminder of his failed relationship, and his attacks were a twisted form of retribution. Bundy's crimes were marked by a chilling pattern. He meticulously planned each abduction, often studying his potential victims and their routines. His methodical approach made him a formidable predator, one who could strike without warning and vanish without a trace. He would often approach his victims in public places, feigning injury or impersonating an authority figure to gain their trust. With a disarming smile and a convincing act, he would lure them into a false sense of security. Whether pretending to have a broken arm or posing as a police officer, Bundy exploited the kindness and trust of his victims, leading them to their doom. Once he had lured them to a secluded location, he would overpower them, often bludgeoning them to death. The brutality of his attacks was staggering, leaving behind scenes of unimaginable horror. These remote locations, often forests or isolated alleys, became the final resting places for many of his victims, hidden away from the prying eyes of the public. The brutality of his crimes shocked the community, and fear gripped the region as the body count continued to rise. News reports of missing women and gruesome discoveries became a grim regularity, casting a shadow over the once peaceful towns. Parents kept a closer watch on their daughters, and the sense of safety that had once been taken for granted was shattered. Law enforcement worked tirelessly to identify and apprehend the perpetrator of these heinous acts, but Bundy's ability to blend in and his meticulous planning made him a ghost-like figure, difficult to track. Detectives pored over evidence, interviewed witnesses, and followed countless leads, but Bundy always seemed to be one step ahead. His clean-cut appearance and charming demeanor allowed him to move through society unnoticed, a wolf in sheep's clothing. As the investigation intensified, so did Bundy's audacity. He began to take greater risks, seemingly taunting the authorities with his brazen actions. His confidence grew with each successful abduction, and he reveled in the chaos he was creating. The fear and confusion that spread through the community only seemed to embolden him further. He seemed to relish the attention his crimes garnered, often returning to the scenes of his crimes to relive the experience. This macabre behavior added another layer of horror to his already terrifying persona. By revisiting the sites of his atrocities, Bundy not only risked capture, but also demonstrated a chilling lack of remorse and a disturbing need to relive his violent acts. His escalating violence and blatant disregard for human life left authorities baffled and the public terrified. Each new report of a missing woman or a discovered body sent waves of panic through the community. The relentless nature of his attacks and the sheer brutality of his methods painted a picture of a man driven by an insatiable and incomprehensible urge to kill. The Pacific Northwest would never be the same, forever haunted by the memory of Ted Bundy's reign of terror.